Okay, so let's talk about your field experience while you're actually doing it. What should you be thinking about, and what should you be doing? Well, one thing you need to be doing every time you go to your field experience site is take your field observation timesheet with you. Your field experience or field, we use a couple of words sort of synonymously, but here I call it the field experience timesheet. It might also be called the observation log from time to time, but it's this one paper. It's here. It's item 2A. You want to download it, print it, and fill out the top. You want to, of course, put your name on it, circle the semester you're in, write my name on it, Kay Hewitt. Then you're going to take it with you every time you go to the field. For every observation, you need to neatly write the date, the amount of time you spent at the site in hours and minutes, the type of activity that you observed or undertook, and where it took place. And of course, there's not a lot of space to write this, so you need to be succinct. Just jot it down succinctly, and then you need the supervisor's signature and contact information, and you don't provide that. It can be phone or email and the contact information, but you don't ever provide that. You need to let them sign that, okay? That's a signature space, not a space for you to just neatly type or print. That is a place where a signature is needed. Be sure you get a signature every time, okay? And then once you've completed 10 or more hours, you just tally up your total time at the bottom, and then you need to hang on to it or get it to me as soon as you can. As soon as you're finished with that, you're actually welcome to get it to me. And down below, there's submission details on how you do that. You can either scan it and upload it into the Dropbox, which is my preference, because then I'll print it, or you can actually get it to me physically by dropping it off during my office hours or by mailing it to me. But you need to look at those details below where I give you lots of specific recommendations. Don't be super casual about how you submit this thing, okay? You want to make sure it gets into my hands. All right, so that's one part of it, that observation log. Very important requirement. Needs to be done completely and properly. The other thing is, how do you capture your observations? Like, you're going to be at this field experience, so what are you supposed to be looking for? Well, I've given you some guidelines. All right, so your ultimate goal for your observations is you're going to be writing a reflection paper that's going to be 4 or more pages, okay? So part 1 of that reflection paper, and we're sort of looking ahead to that paper, but while you're doing your field experiences, you're going to want to be thinking about that. What am I going to be saying in that paper? And you might not know for the first 2 or 3 hours, but then as you continue to go to your field observation, you may start to see some ideas that come and begin to take shape for you and the types of things that you want to talk about, and things that you're learning or things that interest you. So part 1 of that paper will be basically what happened. And this is a very typical setup for when you do an observation, because when you observe, frequently you've got 2 things going on during an observation. One is you're trying to figure out what's happening. What do I see? What's the environment like? How is it set up? How do people interact? What did they do? And when did they do it? And how was it? How did others respond to it? And was it successful? Was it a flop? You know, and well, that's where we get into more of the judgments, actually. So really, you're noting what happened, sort of objectively, what happened. And then the other part of this paper is, what did you think about what happened? Okay? So in part 1, what happened, you're going to talk about where you were, and it could be that this changes a little bit, because it could be you're in a complex site that has multiple rooms. It could be there's a gym that you're in sometimes, and maybe sometimes you're outside in the play yard, or it just depends on your site. And in some cases, some of you have more than one location that you're going to be looking at this semester. Most of you are going to be in one place, but some of you might have more than one. So, be clear what you're talking about in your paper. So where were you located, who you're with, what were your responsibilities, what happened and what you saw, anything interesting or notable in terms of interactions with people, other workers, parents, or children. So those are some sort of guidelines for how you talk about what happened. You tell us, what did you do, what did you see, where were you, that kind of thing. Part 2 is your reflections about what happened. So how did this experience make you think about education? That's one question I want you to be considering. Choose 2 to 5, and it does not have to necessarily be in this order provided. It could be that is the last thing you want to talk about. Choose 2 to 5 topics or issues from the following course-related topics to focus on. So how did the topic or issue show up in your setting? What more has your field experience taught you about these topics or issues? So some examples are learning styles, multiple intelligences, special needs, diversity, gender, poverty, ritual and routine, organizational finance, ethics, visible versus invisible curriculum, and professionalism types of things. So look at the list there. I've actually linked back to what chapters in your textbook if you want to have a reference. Okay, what does she mean by that? That's where it's noted in the book. Those are some good things that I think a lot of you will see at your sites that you could focus on and sort of try to think about that. So as you do your observations, if you know that you're interested in gender, maybe just make sure that every day you ask questions like, what's going on with gender here? You know, what are the boys doing as opposed to the girls? How are they grouped? Do they opt to group, stand together? How do they interact? What's going on? Do the instructors treat boys differently from girls? If so, how? So you want to be thinking all about that issue and asking questions around it, okay? So just be super inquisitive, and that's what you have to do when you observe. You have to ask yourself lots of questions, and then that helps you to try to find other things to observe and think about, and it helps you see in a different way. So you ask questions all around that observation as you're doing it, okay? But these themes or topics are a good way to help you generate things to look for. Another question in this section is overall, what do you feel you have gained from the field experience? I haven't said this before, but you do not need to provide any full names of people. We don't want to identify anybody. I don't want to know who the children were that you were with or the exact name of the supervisor. It should not appear in this paper, okay? You're protecting anonymity in this. You do not have to necessarily organize your paper exactly the way I have it, but for the most part, I do want you to give me about 2 pages of description of what happened and about 2 pages of your reflection. It could be that it makes more sense for you to mix the two up. So I just structured it this way so it's clear to you, to give you a guideline about the sort of balance that you want to have. But it may make sense to say, on day 1, I was here, here's what happened, and then here's what I think about what happened. It could be that's the better way to do it. So you can decide about that, but these are the guidelines for how, the types of things you want to hit on. I have provided a template, an observational template that it's the structure that I use. I'm using it myself this semester. Pretty much every semester I go and do observations of some kind. And basically the template is, there's a column for time, because sometimes it's useful to know how long something that you're observing happened. So you can jot down time notes there. And then the next column is basically what you saw, and then the third column is what you thought about it. And it's important if it's good if you can take notes while you're on site. It's good if you have a little piece of paper or a little notebook that you can pull out every once in a while just to jot something down so you don't forget about it. That's one good thing to do. It's probably best that you don't just sit there the whole time just writing in a notebook, but trying to immerse yourself a little bit more in the environment than that. But one thing that field observers do, qualitative researchers, is they'll go and they'll set aside time after their observation to sit down and take notes for about 10 or 15 minutes. They'll just write down everything that they can remember. So you have to really remember that your memory is an important tool in this observation experience. You do not want to rely on your memory. Don't strain your memory to have to remember things weeks after it happened. You need to get this stuff written down on paper in some form or fashion. Pretty much the day of is the best time to do it. Okay, and really right after the observation, that's a good time to schedule some additional time. All right, so that's all I'm going to say about this section. Let me know if you have any questions.